Get going. We have a quorum. Let's start off by doing welcome and introductions. I'm Alan Zelenko with the City of Eugene City Councilor. Mayor.
Kitty Piercy, Mayor of Eugene.
Ethan Nelson, sitting in for John Reese, City Manager.
Lynn Taylor, Mayor's Recorder.
Gary Gillespie, LTD District Number 5.
Aurora Jackson, Lane Transit District.
Brandy Brindle, ODOT.
Brenda Wilson, LCOG.
Paul Thompson, LCOG.
Peter Sheets, City of Coburg.
Jerry Manny, City of Coburg, City Councilor.
Gino Grimaldi, City of Springfield.
I'll say Sean Van Gorden's on his way. He texted me. I'm Christine Lundberg, Mayor of Springfield.
David Reeser, Lane County, sitting in for Steve Mokrahysky.
Sid Lykin, Lane County Board of Commissioners.
Pat Farr, Lane County Board of Commissioners, and thank you for the Eugene tap water that we have to drink today and no alternatives other than fizzy stuff. Thank you.
Kelly Dale, Lane Transit District.
Tom Boyat, City of Springfield.
Ellen Courier, Lane Council of Governments.
Jan Spencer, Citizen at Large.
Mark.
Mark Rabinowitz, SustainEugene.org.
Kelly Clark with LCOG.
Edward McLone, LTD.
Tricia Brand, Point Point with LTD.
Rob Interfeld, City of Eugene.
Jeff Kernan, City of Coburg.
Dan Collister, LCOG.
Carleen Riley, River Road.
Rob Zakio, Better Eugene Springfield Transit.
Webb Sussman, Citizen at Large.
All right. Thank you. Thank you all for coming. I'll entertain a motion for approval of the minutes of September 1st.
So moved.
Oh, well, you need to do comments from audience.
Oh,
Oh, not yet.
Afterwards,
No, we're
right.
still doing a minute.
Okay,
Sorry.
sorry.
There's been a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any additions, corrections, or deletions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you, carries. Christine, seconded by Commissioner Farr. Are there, there's no adjustments to the agenda. Any announcements from MPC members? Christine?
I'd like to announce that we have openings on our BPAC, our Bike Pedestrian Advisory Committee, and I'll let Tom say where you could apply for it on our website.
So the easiest way to find it is to Google Springfield, Oregon BPAC. But if you also want to go to our homepage, city homepage, there's an I want to drop-down menu, apply for drop-down, boards and commissions drop-down, and you can find it that way.
All right. City of Springfield.
And it closes tomorrow afternoon.
Oh, 5 p.m.-ish. Okay, any other, Franny?
Yeah, I just wanted to, and there was a media release about this yesterday, but the area district office we're moving to a new location on 1121 Fairfield, which is off of Highway 99 by the Putters Golf Green, whatever. And so we'll be resuming operations there on Monday. My phone number will stay the same. My email will stay the same. I might be kind of out of touch a little bit in between now and Monday. So that's it.
Anybody else? Okay. With that, we'll go from comments from the audience. They have 3 people signed up. If anybody else wants to sign up, we'll give you an opportunity. We have 3 minutes each. Mark Rabinowitz, Rob Zako, and Jan Spencer. Mark, want to come up to the table?
Okay. A decade ago, the Federal Highway Administration selected no build for the West Eugene Parkway because it is illegal to build highways that are federally funded through parklands, Section 4F of the Transportation Act. When that happened, I hoped that there would be a change in the assumptions that this and other bodies use to plan for energy and transportation futures, which did not happen. Federal law requires a 20-year plan for federally funded projects. So projects you vote on now are supposed to be thinking about the 2030s and maybe even 2040. Meanwhile, which I passed out the flyer for each of you, traffic has peaked. It peaked in Lane County, vehicle miles traveled, in 2003. In Oregon, it peaked in 2002. There is no acknowledgement of that in the materials that were posted on the LCOG website for today's meeting. In August, 2 months ago, the Alaska Pipeline reached a low of 443,000 barrels a day, starting to go below the threshold of 500,000 barrels a day, where in the wintertime it will freeze up and cease operation. When that happens, we will have oil rationing in Lane County. And there's absolutely no discussion of a plan B on what to do about that. Instead, you have before you in the packet plans for massive widening of Beltline Highway and other projects that are going to be our version of Anchor Watt for future generations. We do not need that. Also recently, the City of Eugene's climate expert left city employment, and before he left, he privately conceded that getting carbon credits to offset highway widening was ridiculous. I asked him, are you willing to say that in public? And he said no, because he did not have the freedom to say what he privately thought. A concern I have is that as the oil declines and the economic impacts of that become more acute, we're going to have peak blame and scapegoating, because when the economy declines, that's when we have demagogues and scapegoating. I really hope to be wrong on that prediction, but instead of spending $1 billion on highway expansion, we need to think about futures that are physically possible. Electric cars sound nice, but it takes a huge amount of energy to manufacture an electric car, and the electricity on the Western grid is now primarily coming from natural gas. Natural gas peaked in the United States in 1973, when I was in elementary school, and fracked gas is peaking now. In fact, natural gas since 1973 has declined in half. Solar's nice, but even on a day like today, you don't get that much power because the angle of the sun is low, and when it's rainy in Eugene, we get very little solar energy. It's wonderful in June, it's not so wonderful in January. But what do I know? I've only been using solar for 26 years. So it would be nice to see outgoing politicians use their influence to say we shouldn't expand Beltline to 10 or 11 lanes, and we should think about how to plan for futures that are physically possible.
Thanks. I'll note that Councilor Shonda Gordon arrived. And next up is Rob Zako.
Good morning, Chair Zelenka, members of MPC. I'm Rob Zako, Executive Director of Better Eugene Springfield Transit, and it's my pleasure this morning to invite you to a public event. As you know, we've got good transit in our community. LTD and our partners here we're one of the first communities to have MX in the country, one of the first 10, and we're building that out. In 2014, LTD was honored as being one of the #1 transit agency nationwide of medium sizes. We're doing good stuff in our community, but we shouldn't rest on our laurels. We can always do better. And best, and look at the national media, have seen other communities, places like Houston, Texas, Richmond, Virginia, Research Triangle, North Carolina, Spokane, Washington, Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, who are doing some pretty innovative stuff. And we looked into what they're doing, and we found that something common in all those communities is that they're all engaging one guy named Jarrett Walker. And this guy, Jarrett Walker, happens to live in Portland, Oregon. He's actually been in our town before. So we thought it'd be good for our community to hear what other communities are doing to improve their transit system. So BEST, along with both chambers of commerce, the Eugene area and the Springfield, with the League of Women Voters, with ARP Oregon, with the architects, with Live Move student group on campus, and other groups are all jointly co-sponsoring an event November 30th after work. Sort of 4:45 is sort of appetizers, but the presentation starts at 5:30 at the Downtown Athletic Club. So Wednesday, November 30th, I'll get an email link out to you for you to sign up. It's free to the public, and I hope you can come. And we'll hear what Jarrett has to say about what other communities are doing and how we might do better. Thank you very much.
Name again? Jarrett.
Jarrett Walker, Jarrett. Go to best-oregon.org, our website, /Walker. It'll have all the details so you can sign up there.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is John Spencer.
Hi, thank you. And that's Jan. It's a European Jan. It's a American Eugene Jan. So thanks. My name's Jan Spencer, and I live out in River Road. And I appreciate everybody donating. If you're a volunteer, I think maybe some people are being paid to be here, which is okay. But I particularly appreciate people who donate their time and interest to the community, such as our mayor. I went to that, your sort of farewell. So I want to make available to you some very interesting and I think useful information. I made this poster, and there's a poster for everybody here. And there's several posters I'll put back out here too. These are posters that include a number of elements. I take a quick look at our economic system, global market capitalism, and it's not a flattering assessment of our economic system. That is a small part of the poster. The poster essentially is what to do about the global issues of environment, of climate change, of a profoundly dishonest economic system, global relations. Everybody here realizes we got big problems. Everybody does. And what's the assessment? Well, we can say that we need to do certain types of actions to kind of mitigate. I think that the core issue is that virtually all of these problems, global issues, come from the logic of market capitalism. So this poster explains that in as brief as a way as possible. But as I mentioned, it's mostly about what to do about it. How can we repair what is already here? For myself, I've made big changes on my quarter-acre suburban property. At least a couple people have been there. And the strategies for more localizing and making more green, reducing our eco-footprint, actually could be a huge stimulus to local and green jobs. This poster includes information about that. It also includes a term I like is allies and assets. What are the existing community entities, communities of faith, the city, neighborhood associations, nonprofits, ad hoc groups? When you kind of look at the issues through the kind of a lens that this poster provides, you really begin to see a lot of allies and assets that don't even know they're allies and assets. So that's a lot of what this poster is about, is who are the people, who are the entities in our communities, very much including the government. Of course, it includes the governments that can be a big part of addressing the issues. But the issue, the main focus is to reduce our eco-footprints. Building new highways, it just doesn't make sense. The globalized economy, our economic system is not an ally for a green and peaceful planet. So I don't know what your protocol is. Can I just pass these around? Okay. There we go there. Yeah, just go ahead.
Thank you, Jan.
Free of charge, yes. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Hearing none, we'll close that part of the meeting and we'll move on to item 6, MPO issues. 6A is the Regional Transportation Plan update. Paul, this is it met the mandatory inch-thick part of our agenda. So this is a minor revision. It has red lines and highlights. It's not a complete ground-up rewrite. So it's so there's red line changes and highlights of new sections we added. Again, this is our first hit of this, and there you go, man.
I have one of these.
And it's for our feedback. It'll come back as a final draft, which will go out to the public in December, and then we'll have approval in either January or February. So I encourage all the jurisdictions to check with their own staff on what's in here, and they've all looked at it. What's not included in here, and if you'll read through it in Chapter 3, there's numerous blank pages. Pages 14 through 23 are just blank. That's where the projects list is going to be, which will have the project descriptions and the dollars associated with them. Those are in progress. they are the accumulation of all of our TSPs, and the Eugene one, for instance. Right. Stole your thunder, Paul. Go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. I have a few more things to say. Thank you. So, as Councilor Zelinka noted, in your packet is a pre-draft, if you will, of chapters 1 through 4 of the current RTP, redlined with the changes that are necessary or desired in order to accomplish a limited scope minor update of this RTP that brings it into alignment with the current local plans and the current federal requirements. So as we've told you many months ago, this is a very limited scope update to the RTP. There are a number of reasons for that. The primary one is that the FAST Act, the new federal transportation legislation, came out fairly recently, and as a result of that FAST Act, there is a whole set of new requirements around performance measures and benchmarks that will be required of the MPO's long-range plan, and there's no completion of the rulemaking or guidance for that yet. So those new regulations that we have to reflect in this long-range plan are still being developed by the federal government, and as a matter of fact, once they're developed, they then have to go through, they have to be met by the state DOT before we even consider setting them as NPOs. So we have to do an RTP update on a certain cycle, and we had to do this minor update in order to not go beyond that time frame. It's the next RTP update that will get in depth into changing things in here wholesale to the extent you desire. What is before you in this red line version, again, is the four text chapters of the RTP. Everything else that's in the RTP is appendices, it's maps, it's supporting data, there's an appendix that's the glossary. All of those things are not likely to change a lot. And as Councilor Zelinka noted, I wanted to point out that in Chapter 3, where there's blank pages, that's where the project lists will go. We didn't put those in this version today because the project lists are going through their final quality control, if you will. We have been working with your local jurisdiction staff extensively on those project lists. They are predominantly a roll-up of your local TSP project lists and ODOT project changes that have occurred in the last 4 years. And as you know, Eugene, Springfield, and Coburg have been working on their local TSPs and updating those project lists. So that information is being gathered and, like I said, going through the final quality control. And when we bring out the public release draft of this in the next month or two, you will see new project lists, you will see new maps and all of that. This text red line, again, for the most part, is to make sure that we update everything to be consistent with the federal language, the new name of the FAST Act for that matter, and anything that needed to be changed so that it was consistent with your new local plans that either have been adopted or just now are being adopted by the city of Eugene. Your staff, I want to emphasize that your staff, both land use and in some cases, or both transportation and in some cases land use staff, have gone through this extensively with us and have provided a lot of the input. That's why there's revision tracking in a couple of different colors in here, because we've taken input from a couple of different people and put it together into this one document. And I want to point out one other thing. Chapter 4, if you happen to go and look at it or want to now, page 5 of Chapter 4 has Table 8, which is performance measures. It's highlighted in yellow because we haven't updated these yet. And I want to remind you that this document, the RTP, has been significantly the same. It's had the same policy framework appropriately for a number of years now. It originally in 2001 started as both the federal regional transportation plan, which is what it solely is now, the Metropolitan Area Regional Transportation System Plan, meeting the state planning requirements, and it was the Eugene Springfield local TSP. So it was your local transportation plan meeting state requirements. The majority of these performance measures arose out of, if you will, a lot of the state requirements at the time because there weren't any federal performance measure requirements. As I just mentioned, the federal performance measure requirements are brand new and they're not even set in stone yet. We don't know what they're going to be. They haven't determined what new congestion measures we'll have to meet or other things. And so what we are actually recommending is that for this minor update, we would like to remove all of these outdated performance measures from the draft that we will release in the next month or two, thus setting a clean slate for, number one, recognizing the new performance measures that some of you have adopted in your local TSPs very recently, and number two, the new performance measures that we will have to put in the federal plan during the next update of the RTP after USDOT completes the rulemaking and tells us what those are. So we are suggesting that, we are asking you today that not only do you look through this and consult with your staff if you have any questions, because they really are the experts at your level on the red line changes that you see, and also if you have any feedback or concern about removing those performance measures when we release the draft in a month or two. Again, we think that they are, at this point, not necessary because you have performance measures in some of your new local plans, that they will be irrelevant shortly because new federal performance measures are coming out, and that frankly, in order to update these, there would be a tremendous amount of modeling work necessary in the next 1 to 2 months, which obviously would cost time and money, and we'd like to be efficient and not do that if necessary. So again, this is a preliminary draft. We're just asking you if there's any comments or feedback today, any concerns, anything that I or your staff can answer today or over the next month. We anticipate trying to have a draft, full public release for input draft at the December NPC meeting. We would hold a minimum 30-day public comment period so we could adopt as early as January or perhaps February. And that draft would include the completed draft project lists, the maps, and all the other appendices.
So pulling Table 8 out temporarily because it's old, it's 2001, and the new federal rules are in process but not yet adopted, and also some state rules are in process, not yet adopted. Paul and I sit on Global Warming Commission. Paul sits on it as our NPC representative on the targeted greenhouse gas rule for transportation for LCDC, which is coming up as a new rule. So all those things are right in progress right now. So apparently going through this, mean we'd have to do it over again when all these new rules come into place. So not doing it now doesn't mean we're not doing it or pulling it out. It means that we're just going to wait for all the rules to get finalized before we actually do it, so we don't have to do it twice and waste our time.
Can that information be included in this?
We can,
excuse me, go ahead, Paul. It's good, yeah.
In a cover memo to the public release draft, we can talk about this in detail about how there are federal performance measures that are being developed. There are state performance measures around greenhouse gas emissions, updating any new set.
When you pulled this out, put that same language in here at Table 8.
Okay.
Pat, and then Christine.
Which leaves a gap in time, presumably, between the. So what's the default position? You just delay decisions?
It doesn't delay decisions. It won't affect any decisions at all because right now, at the federal level, which this is a federal document, there are no requirements for performance measures yet. And at the state level, you have, to the extent necessary, addressed those in the recent updates of your local plans or the ones that are underway.
We would presume that's the case universally throughout Oregon then.
Yeah. But when they come up with the new rules, there will be a requirement to comply with the new reporting requirements. So then they'll give us a time frame to put that into our document.
There's no firm date yet, but we believe that we will probably have to meet the new federal requirements as early as 2018 and as late as 2020.
If I may. So could continue with that. You know, occasionally things like that happen. We're waiting for the new regulations to come in. So in the meantime, we can't make decisions based upon, we don't have regulations. Oh, we can presume what the new regulations are going to look like. And do we have an example of this one?
Oh, maybe.
Yeah.
Means basically at this point, it looks like it's going to be like that. So we know broadly what those areas are going to be, but they have not set what the specific requirements to address those are yet. Okay. And so we have some ability to narrow our thinking about it, but we just can't set any benchmarks yet because they haven't told us. And transit, for instance, transit asset management is another one. Well,
you know, you're a professional, Paul, and here around this table, we have other jobs. So I personally defer to your expertise and your knowledge and all the tremendous amount of work you put in. So my questions may seem a little bit off base to you, but projects in progress right now, will any of them get stalled because we don't have performance measures in place at some point? That will not happen. Okay.
And it's, again, not just my recommendation. I have asked the staff committee, the regional NPO staff committee, which includes staff from all of your agencies, if this is an okay proposal, and they have all said yes.
Okay. Good. And I trust you as a clearinghouse and the central gathering point for that. Then, we're looking at FEMA right now, and regulations that are coming down with FEMA that some seem pretty onerous in terms of building a pump house. So, so we're looking at, making decisions based upon what we think FEMA regulations may be for the future, and that's almost a requirement. So I'm just a little bit cautious about stalling things that are already underway and unnecessarily adding expense to projects.
Again, I can reassure you that that won't be the case, because there's no federal requirement. This only pertains to federal regulations, federal requirements to move projects forward, and there's no federal requirements for any performance measures yet. The fact that we've had some in here in a federal plan for the past 15 years means that we were just ahead of the curve.
But then I'm not whipping this by any means, but I have one further question. So we have local regulations here that we defer to as far as the requirements. But what about Oregon? Can we be sure that things aren't happening throughout the state when this goes through in places that we don't know that there are local regulations in place that would apply? Now, if that's really, I'm wide open if that's a silly question, but tell me why it's a silly question.
It's not a silly question, but my answer is that this document adopted by this federal policy board has no bearing on meeting state requirements or not. It has no bearing on state review of transportation projects or land use projects. So that's contained in your local TSPs, your local comprehensive plans, and all of those documents that meet the state requirements. So again, this won't have any impact on what's happening within the state at that level.
And it's not, okay, great. It's not going to have impact on what is in progress currently?
No.
Okay, great. Thanks, Paul. That explains it well enough that I can understand what you're saying. So.
All right, thank you.
Just for those in the audience and those watching on TV, there are two levels of plans that we do. We do our local plans, transportation system plans, which are done at the city and the county and LTD and Coburg level, and they meet the state requirements. And then there's this regional transportation plan, which meets the federal requirements, and then they get smushed together, a technical term, so that they are consistent at the end. So this will be consistent with the state plans, which are done at the local level, and then they get pushed together. All right? So this one just meets the federal requirements, and our local ones meet the state requirements.
And so for the benefit of those watching, this doesn't affect anything that's happening?
At this time.
At this time, right. Christy?
Paul, I just had one nitpicky question and a comment. It's Chapter 2, page 28. Under the TSI Roadway Policy 1, Mobility and Safety for All Modes, you have in the boxed-in area emergency and freight, but it has a question mark. And then it has and freight in the policy definition and intent. So I'm thinking, there's a question mark there. Did you mean a question mark, or there was a question that we include freight?
Well, again, maybe the question mark in the blue box is redundant, because everything in the newly inserted text is a question of whether it's appropriate to insert it. We feel that freight is appropriate to insert here because we already know that the new FAST Act has new freight planning requirements of the MPOs, and that there will be performance measures around them. So ensuring mobility and safety, we want to emphasize freight now, and we'll have to get to the specifics of how that's done as we do the next update. So the question mark itself is probably redundant, but the insertion of the words "and freight" we feel is appropriate as a very first step, and then we'll get into those details in the next update.
Yeah, and I agree with that. It caught my attention. Not that I was reading this, that somehow or another we explain ourselves a little better, that we want our neighborhoods and things to be connected with you know, all of the things that make us connected, you know, whether it's shopping and it's homes and it's bike paths and it's all of those ways to get around. So that's much more explanatory than nodal, which I think has been the butt of numerous jokes over the years for those of us who worked on transplan these many years ago. So thank you so much for taking the word nodal out of the document. Thank you.
Mayor Piercy and then Gary.
So, ask the question and have an understanding. I always say, shouldn't you write it down that you've done that and you've been given the answer, that it's not going to affect anything, so that in future time, when somebody reads it, they know that you are operating under that understanding, having checked it out, because those things happen along the way, as you know. So that's just my ask you to think about that as you do. Talks about reasonable cost, reasonable choices, thinks what's reasonable. I mean, you know, everybody has a little different notion of what that that might mean, and there's a lot of you see where I'm talking about, Paul?
I'm sorry, what page? If I-
It's chapter 2, page 4, under goal, objectives under goal 2.
Thank you.
The third one, which you've added, there's also added with relative ease, within a reasonable time, at a reasonable cost, and with reasonable choices. And I don't know if there's a better word, but reasonable to me begs, reasonable to whom?
We will make note of that, and I'll have a discussion with staff about that. That's a good point. And in addition to having a discussion with staff about that, one of the things I will note is that one of the new Federal Transportation Act performance measures will be around system performance. And so there is quite a bit of discussion nationally now about what that means. System performance, to some extent, ties into reasonable time, and some of these other statements in here. And so there's an attempt at the federal level to put some definition and some performance measure requirements around that. I will tell you, just as an aside, that as they've been going through the rulemaking on the performance measures, many of the performance measures nationally might get 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 comments as they put out drafts. The one on system performance so far has received over 40,000 comments. So there is a lot of input on that one.
Thank you.
Mr. Gillespie.
It seems like everybody wants to comment on performance as opposed to actually performing. I had a question about the mode shares. Will the new statistics include what were the 2035 goals? And I guess I'm a little concerned about this because, yeah, going from 2.7 to 3.1 is a 14.4% increase, but it's negligibly noticed. And none of the criteria in that whole mode share stack actually results in a total 1% increase or decrease. Now, you know, there's, what was the line? There's lies, damn lies, and statistics. And I'm just a little worried that this is it's a fairly cheap effort, I guess is the way I would describe it, to go from 2.7 to 3.1 in 25 years. That's not cake and wine participation awards. It's not a celebration. So I guess if the new goals come out, are we going to maintain those 2035 goals as a benchmark for 2035, or are we simply going to lower 2035 to correlate with whatever the increase is to 2020 or wherever you go? I guess I'm looking at this like the auto industry and CAFE standards. For years, they just went before Congress and said, well, you know, we've got this CAFE standard and we've got one car that'll meet it. And if we look at it overall, that raises the average for all the gas guzzlers. And I guess I'm a little worried about the future of because these are basically alternative modes of transportation here. And if our goal is by 2035, none of them constitutes a 1% total or one increase or decrease, that's kind of a sad commentary.
So, again, a couple of things I think I can say about that. These performance measures were developed based on a 2010 baseline. They were developed in 2011 for this document that was adopted in 2012. I think a fair amount of things have changed in the past 4 to 5 years, and a fair amount of our emphasis around how we're looking at the system has changed in those 4 or 5 years. This draft that we hope to release in the next month or two will have a 2040 horizon. And at that time, we're saying, let's not attempt to measure performance measures yet, because the federal rules are being rewritten and the state rules are being rewritten. When those rules are rewritten, hopefully within the next year, we would anticipate those processes being complete, we will be starting our next update of this. We have 4 years to do that. And then it will be entirely up to you as the policy board for the MPO to say, what targets do we want to achieve by what would then be a 2045 horizon? And if it takes something more than what we have in here to attempt to achieve a more aggressive target, if you will, in the specific case that you're talking about, a greater mode shift in one way or another, then this body, as the policy board and the staff supporting you, would need to figure out what goals, objectives, and policies and actual implementation measures it would take to do that, and are achievable and financially, and practically achievable. So, no, I don't think that any of these existing benchmarks will remain where they are. I've seen quite a bit of shifts since these were originally developed, and in thinking and in concern. Safety is much more of a concern than it was when these were developed. Safety is not on here as a performance measure at all. So I think it's going to be a completely whole new look at that, with the ability to set goals, targets, performance measures that go beyond this if that's the desire.
Thank you.
Second time. I'll also point out that in the Eugene TSP, I think there's a 3 to 4 fold increase in alternative modes that's envisioned in our TSP. So that will be reflected here too. Tom?
That has not yet been rolled up into this, because that's.
Well, this is 2001.
Exactly.
This is 16 years old. We've grown since then in our thinking and methodology and our people.
Sure. Just to follow on what Paul's saying in terms of looking at performance measures a little bit differently.
You want to speak into so people on TV can hear you. Thanks, Tom.
I was going to say, just to pick up on what Paul is saying in terms of taking a new look at performance measures, one of the things that I know specifically with respect to transit and specifically with respect to Gary's comments, one of the things that we want to look at when we talk about mode choice is the concept of where are these modes most competitive. So when you're looking at all the regional trips made every day in the region, transit's never going to compete for all of those. Let's look instead, in fact, we've embedded in other policy language around BRT, the concept of where where BRT can increase transit mode share in the corridor. So let's look at those kinds of measures. That's the kind of thing I think we'll be looking at as we move forward over the next 4 years.
So just to build on that, corridor-specific performance measures around mode choice or around safety is one way we could change the way we look at this.
Thank you.
Thanks. Any other comments or questions? All right. This is a non-action item. It's just information only. So we will move on to item 6B, Oregon Metropolitan Planning Organizational Consortium, otherwise known as OMPOC. They're going to be meeting here. They're going to be meeting on October 7th. This paper is the red line version of one that you've, right, December 7th, sorry. Pearl Harbor Day. Nice day.
No correlation.
This is a red line document of the stuff that you've already seen, which was our initial shot at OMPOC support for Common Ground, which they took and then modified this as OMPOC at the meeting. Unfortunately, Mayor Lundberg wasn't there. And this was unanimous OMPOC suggestion to move this forward, to send it to the MPOs for their approval. The three biggies I'd point out are on page 1, instead of our 15 to 20 cents a gallon, they're suggesting 30 cents a gallon support for a gas tax, with it broken out. And then the second one is that they broke out passenger rail and freight into two separate bullets, standalone bullets, which I think is a good idea. And then finally, they changed the air quality concern 14 and wrapped it up into the climate change one, and combined them to be consistent with the visioning, mayor's visioning language on the transportation visioning package. My comment on that is the same comment that I had before, which was that this de-emphasizes climate change, and with 2015 being the warmest year on record and the lowest water year, now surpassing 1934, if climate change isn't front and center, you're not paying attention. So I don't like that change, but I understand why they did it. Any other comments about this? We want to move this forward as an approval item.
What I'd like today is direction to your OMPOC members. Again, Lane Council of Governments has the contract to staff the Oregon MPO Consortium, and so in order to be a little bit efficient, when they wanted a draft position paper to look at, I took the one that you'd already approved, which would be this without the red lines, and put that out there to the MPO managers first offline, and they said that looks like a good starting point. And then in Bend on October 7th, they looked at it and made the suggested changes that you see redlined here to a draft for the individual MPOs to then consider, so that on December 9th, when OMPOC next meets, they can vote to support a specific legislative position paper. We're asking for you to direct your OMPOC members on supporting this as it's drafted with the changes. Councilor Zelinka has pointed out the major changes on the 30-cent per gallon gas tax. It was interesting that OMPOC was willing to go that far, but one of the things that's changed since you supported it at 15 to 20 cents is that we've heard from multiple sources in one-on-one conversations that the Oregon Trucking Association seems prepared to support a higher level increase than we originally thought they were. So I'm not sure it'll end up at 30 cents, but it looks like there's room to move even more boldly than we thought originally. And OMPOC, again, as the board on October 7th, was willing to go to that proposal. So again, we just need direction to Mayor Lundberg and Gary as your OMPOC members. They next meet on December 9th, where they hope to approve this.
Well, I'm gonna, because I'm going to be and I chair the OMPOC, so I'll let everyone else weigh in on that. You know, hindsight's a wonderful thing, and the only thing that I realize now, and because it came to my attention when I was in Chicago, and I heard Ray LaHood, who's you know, an ex or a past department head from the federal government, say, boy, we just need more money. So I asked him then, because it was on the top of my head, is, you know, we have a lot of processes, and we just got done talking about a lot of process, but we never seem to get a real handle on streamlining processes. And I know this is state level, but it sure would be nice if the legislature in the future, and if we could take it up in the future, is that we look at how we streamline maybe some of the processes. You have at the federal level categorical exclusions and things like that that actually make the work part of it that is not the project end more efficient. And if we could do something where it's more efficient, and I asked him that question, you have any suggestions about that? And honest to God, I stumped him. And he said he wished he had a good answer for that. So I didn't get any help from somebody who, could have given us a little bit of assistance on that. So for a future, when we're looking maybe out, is how can we impact the amount of time, effort, and money that we spend on just the front end and not anywhere near the project end where we could be building something on behalf of the citizens. So that's just that part. But boy, it sure be great to go to that OMPOC meeting and know exactly, what we're supporting here, whether it's 30 cents or where we want to be, because everybody comes with a very different set of expectations. But Paul was there, I'm sure, and Brenda, and 30 cents was good.
Mayor Pierce, Gary, did you have your hand up?
No.
Well, I guess I just think if the state recognizes climate change, why can't we say the word?
The concern around the OMPOC table was that, not for this MPO because you approved that language, but for some of the other MPOs, those would be words that would trigger concern and perhaps not support for the entire document.
I understand that. I'm just saying that is a state, as a state policy level, we do acknowledge that.
I agree.
we're dealing with.
And so the environmental stewardship language was what the Vision Panel came up with in its One Oregon final report. So OMPOC, adopted that as a proposal. Keep in mind that the document that you approved, that I've already sent off to the legislative committee, says climate change specifically, so it's not backing off for this body, but it's trying to find a place that OMPOC as a consortium and Mayor Lumberg as chair can get that body to support.
To make that comment.
Right, so, and to that point, Mayor Piercy, I made sure that the point of achieving greenhouse gas reduction goals was put in there because that's the goal. And so, keeping everybody's eye on the goal without detracting from what we're actually trying to accomplish and allowing that conversation to go off track, so.
I hear you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Lycan?
So, on this, so this is basically, this is a wish list, is that correct?
It's a position paper of things that we'd like the package to address. Yes.
And I think, it's fine, and I wish I had a crystal ball to know what's gonna happen on Tuesday with the House and the Senate, because, reminder, any sort of gas tax increase, the numbers are 36 and 18. And we always have to keep that in mind, 36 and 18, otherwise there is no increase.
No budget, yes.
And one.
So, yes, and so I think on this, I know and I've heard, Paul, we talked about the same thing, the Oregon Truckers Association, that's potential. I don't know if that's if that's real, or if they know something in the back of their head that they don't have 36 and 18, and so why not? I don't know. It'll be interesting to find that out. Gonna have to probably chase down Bob Russell and ask him that question. Better invite him for a beer. Anyway, so I'm fine with this as a position paper. I don't have an objection, but I do think that there's reality out there. And when we were at the OTC retreat and the ACT chairs, the one thing that I expressed is I'm meeting with my colleagues around the state, commissioners in the east side, and in particular, and that is make sure you have Representative Bence's back. Because to me, he's one of the key Republicans in this whole conversation, because he's a strong advocate on transportation. But I also don't believe he's going to put himself out there just for the sake of it. And I think as long as commissioners have his, keep supporting him, knowing that's out there, that's going to be really key. So I have no objection here, but I think it's important that we, in our mind, realize that any sort of increase, 36 and 18 are the numbers that we'll take in each body to put forth a gas tax.
Sean?
I think Gary was first.
No, go ahead.
No, I just raised it now.
So, yeah, I think the document's fine. The one, I guess, correction that I have is when, under jurisdictional transfers, the position paper suggests dedicating, a cent to jurisdictional transfers.
Right.
But in the new paragraph that breaks up the 30 cents a gallon, there's not, that cent doesn't appear in here. So the document may not be internally consistent.
That is a good point, and that is something that we can discuss, whether we need to take 1 cent off of the 10-10-532 breakdown, or whether that 1 cent is beyond the 30 cents. Originally, as you approved it, it was 15 to 20 cents and 1 cent of that. So you're correct. That's a good point, and we will have a discussion about how to reconcile that. I think we can do that without changing the intent that you need to support today, though.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you. Gary?
I recall the conversation we had the last time about trucking industry apparently saying they were willing to go to 13. And we talked about, well, if you want to get 13 or more, you ask for more than where they say they're willing to go. Because where someone says they're willing to go isn't always where they wind up. I'm encouraged now that they're apparently willing to go higher than 13. And I think the 30 cents was a good number. I was encouraged that when the OTC met here, Commissioner Bozovich was talking along those level of numbers. I think what he said was something like 25, but in 5-cent increments. And I think this is a good number to stick with. And if the governor is serious about a new transportation plan, this is a good stepping up point for her to come up to in her next term. So I'm encouraged by this.
Need a motion.
Randy?
Yeah, Chair Lyken, Lane Act Chair Lyken, when he mentioned Representative Benz, I wanted to just add a note. He was at the Legislative Committee tour that we had recently in Albany and Corvallis, and we had an ACT roundtable with the Legislative Committee, and he specifically mentioned that they need to hear support from the communities and from individuals, because going into this session, asking for a tax increase is going to be very difficult. He knows it's a politically trying thing to do, and that I think these letters are very helpful in shoring up the support and proving the support is there. And he also highly recommended letters to the editor, city councils to discuss it, local agencies, just keep bringing these things up and talking about it and getting the community behind this as well, so that when they're working in the legislature, that they hear from the citizenry as well, that they would accept something of an increased gas tax. I wanted to share that.
Thanks. I have 2 objections to this. One is the fact that we actually deleted the words climate change from number 11. I understand what they're trying to do, but 1/3 of the emissions, greenhouse gas emissions in the state come from the transportation sector, and if they're not addressed here, they're not going to get addressed, and I think that is a gigantic big mistake. And one of my problems and one of the major deficiencies of the visioning document that the governor's panel put together was that it didn't even address climate change at all, as far as I'm concerned. The other objection that I have is the allocation of the 30 cents. I don't agree with that 10-10-532 numbers. For one, I wouldn't agree to that split, and secondly, there is no climate change allocation in there. You can cram it into some of these somewhere, I suppose, but my suggestion is that those specifics be deleted, because otherwise I'm a no vote. So with that.
So a question, and who would you put the decision in the hands of, the legislature or for the division?
I think that
I think that's a process that needs to be developed and incorporated into and how we move forward, but I don't agree with this allocation.
Okay.
So with that, a motion. Somebody want to put forward a motion?
There's no point, I guess I would say, if we don't support it, it doesn't go anywhere.
Well, two things. I guess on the climate change wording, perhaps the direction that you may approve to your OMPOC members is to raise that and pursue retaining that language. But does it become a fatal flaw for support if on December 9th, one or more of the other MPOs won't support it and we can't get to agreement? So that might be one way to, provide direction is yes, try and get that language in, and then determine what to do if it's not acceptable to the OMPOC board as a whole. On the breakdown of the 30 cents, I understand where you're coming from completely. I think we can certainly propose that. I want to point out that while it's not there is nothing dedicated to climate change in there, and there's nothing dedicated to some other things that might be significant for us, such as safety, that the way this is worded is 10 cents is specifically for seismic and related needs until those are addressed, and then it becomes part of the, if nothing else has changed, 50, 30, 20 general gas tax money. And those last 3 cents and 2 cents are pretty specific also. But the second 10 cents, when it says rebuilding of lost purchasing power, that's simply a 10-cent increase in the gas tax. That's immediately your 50, 30, 20 split. Can be used by the recipients, be it the state DOT, the county, or the cities for whatever purpose, climate change, safety, anything else. And that other 5 cents is saying, on top of the 10 cents that goes to 50, 30, 20, let's put this 5 cents to the cities and counties. Sorry, but excluding ODOT. So that extra 5 cents is just for the city-county share. So there's a fairly significant increase in the city-county share proposed in here. But if we don't agree with that split, we should either ask that it be removed or some other definition be put in.
Go ahead.
Christina and Gary, then the mayor. Piercy.
I think that it's, it can be difficult even at this table to come to agreement, so trying to get Rogue Valleys and Portland Metro and Bend and Salem all on the same page. And we've made great strides from coming from a group that just gets together and doesn't even have dedicated staff to actually being able to speak on behalf of, we make up 2/3 of the population of the state or more?
80%.
80%. So it belongs within the OMPOC groups that sit at that table. So we do have some clout if we can harness it together. So I would be, I need to go and advocate for this, but I'm not comfortable with climate change in the wording, so we're not going to agree on that either, or at least I don't know how. I'm looking at. Yep. So anyway, I know that it will be a deal killer probably with other folks. So it's how do you get to a package that we can actually talk about and have some wording that we can at least present, because we all know it's not necessarily going to be the package. There's other packages that are going to be proposed, and it's going to have to all be put together. You've got, what the legislature did and everything else, and heaven only knows where it'll end up. So it's aspirational at best now. So I would not want to try and push it too far from where the group has agreed.
So
We got a queue. Gary, then Kitty, and then Sean.
I think I agree with one thing you said, and I disagree with the method on it. I think you're absolutely right. This is a process. It's in process. But you don't negotiate a process by giving up stuff before you start the meeting. And I think it's important. I think that the 30 cents is important. But that's a negotiable thing on how it works out. Where does the 30 cents go? But if you don't start at 30 cents, you have no intention of getting 30 cents. And if you don't stress climate change, first of all, you're totally unaware of the earth. But if you don't put it in there at the start, it won't be in there at the finish. And whether or not it's a deal breaker, there are a lot of ways to say climate change without using the double C word. And so I think it's important to approve this. I think the concerns that Councilor Zelenka described are very, very cogent, but you have to start with your broadest package, is the way I would put it. And is it a do or die? If it's nothing or climate change, then that's a different story. But that's part of the process that you're working through. But I think you have to start with that amount and with the concern around how climate change is dealt with, even if it's not called climate change. So.
Kitty's up next, but just to clarify, my objection wasn't to 30 cents. I think we should keep that in there. My objection was to the allocation.
The allocation, yeah.
My recommendation is delete them. Mayor Piercy and then Sean.
Go ahead, I'll wait until everybody's done.
Sean, then Jerry.
So I think I had two thoughts, right? I could get behind taking out the allocation and just saying, that what we're looking for is 30 cents, and here are the things that are important to us. I read 11. I don't think I could support putting climate change back in there. 11's probably language that is more broad and is probably going to get this group to a yes a little bit easier, and I think kind of speaks to both intents, if you will. Environmental stewardship's a good word that people can see what they need to and see what's important to them, and I think it still represents the values of this region as well as what the rest of the region can get to.
I'm certainly in favor of the 30 cents per gallon, and being a representative of a small city who struggles mightily to maintain their infrastructure and keep it intact. And I think in talking to other small city representatives too, they have the same struggle. So depending on how this all is allocated out, I strongly support at least the 5 cents that goes to the cities, because that would be huge for a small city to get that kind of money to help rebuild infrastructure that's just crumbling apart. So I could strongly support that allocation.
Anybody else? Mayor Piercy?
So I would put forward a motion that supported the 30% and almost everything in this, with a request that we would like to see some climate change language put back in it.
And what about the specifics of the allocation?
Not the allocations.
But not, just the 30-cent language, okay. So the motion is 30-cent allocation without the specifics and a request to put climate
I'm not
change.
putting it in there, and you may disagree with this, I'm not putting it in there as a deal breaker. I'm just saying that's what we would like to see happen.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
I'll second that.
I'll make a motion.
She just did.
Oh, that was a motion, okay.
And he seconded it.
All right.
You can third it if you'd like. Any further discussion? Sid?
So, Kitty, I think that's a good compromise. Environmental stewardship's there, but I think a request, I think I'm perfectly happy. That's a good compromise on that, and I just want to say thank you for that, and so that we may be able to get something moving forward. And this also eliminates the specifics, is that correct?
That's correct.
Because I'm good with that too. The specifics were a little concerning to me when I looked at that. And I would agree with Gary, when you're negotiating I don't think you want to you don't want to throw the kitchen sink all at once. And what'll eventually happen is those specifics may eventually get added back in. And if every other group keeps them in there, then so be it. I mean, that's fine. But I think that's part of our motion. So Christine, you can take that with you. If it ends up that that's, I don't think that would be a deal breaker. I can't imagine having specifics with the other MPOs would be a deal breaker. I would be surprised anyway. So I'm okay with that. And I'll look to you on that.
Christine?
Well, I want to be clear. This version is the version that the group agreed to.
The group saw the draft presented to them with the language in black, before the red lines. They discussed it, and one of the suggested changes was to remove climate change because at least one MPO had an issue.
It wasn't to remove climate change, it was to remove the term climate change and replace it with what the goal would be, and the goal would be funding to address air quality concerns and achieve greenhouse gas reduction goals. It wasn't to remove climate change. It was just, they thought that when the discussion happened, that the term climate change would be a hot button issue, and they thought it would detract from what is the real goal, and that is funding to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So I just wanted to clarify.
And that's correct. And funding to reduce greenhouse gas emissions can be in any number of ways, but that, again, the goal to address that environmental stewardship / climate change is reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. So they want to be, in some sense, more specific about that.
Thanks for that, Brenda. That was very clarifying.
Be clear.
So to clarify the motion, let me restate it and see if it's correct. So support for this letter is contingent on the removal of the allocation of the 30 cents and request a more robust conversation about climate change.
They'd request consideration of putting the language back in.
Consideration of the climate change language putting back in. So that was the motion. Everybody clear? Anybody have any more comments? Gary?
I guess I have I just have a clarification. I'm here as a representative LTD, so I'm voting on this as a representative LTD, but I'm also on the OMPOC. It seems it's appropriate for me to vote on this as a representative of LTD. Is that?
An MPC.
MPC member. MPC, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Thank you.
The thing I was going to ask Brenda, based upon your explanation, do you think that inserting the request for climate change language being inserted, do you think that jeopardizes the validity of the letter? Based upon some people saying, hey, it says climate change, I'm out, period.
In conversations that have occurred at OMPOC, that term was very difficult for people to talk about. Even Metro stated that they had to remove that term when they talked about their scenario planning because it was difficult for people to become engaged in the conversation because just putting that term out there closed it down or changed the conversation. And so and we have to accept the fact that there are some people out there that don't believe in climate change or the reasons for it or whatever, but everyone understands that if Oregon is going to meet greenhouse gas reduction goals, then we need funding in order to do that. And I think that everyone around the table is in favor of that funding coming to local jurisdictions in order to meet those mandates. And so that was really more the conversation. It wasn't to de-emphasize the need for that funding or to even remove climate change priority from this list. It was that particular term was a difficult term for them to talk about.
So it removes it as a pariah, as a lightning rod saying, I see those words, so I'm not on.
Yes.
Whereas it does contain all of the elements that go into working against climate change, reduction of greenhouse gases.
Right, and not just in this particular position paper, but conversations that have occurred at OMPOC over the last couple of years.
Okay. So we risk maybe losing some people's reading the letter seriously if the words climate change are
The
in
way the
there.
language is.
The motion you have, if I may, says consider it, but it's not a deal breaker, so I don't think the risk.
Request to consider.
Yeah, okay.
That's what I gathered, that's why I
And
second.
I and I understand that, but just the fact that the words are there, that's not gonna, I mean, to consider what Gary called the double C word.
Yeah. Now it's the C word. We certainly can draft something up.
I'm gonna vote yes on this, but I just wanted to.
Gary?
Just as an aside, I Googled environmental stewardship, and none of the definitions had the word climate change in it. So,
Means different.
so if you're seeking an alternative, that would be the
Everyone around the table agreed to the term environmental stewardship. Yeah, they felt that that was a safer term.
yeah.
Because it means nothing, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, for everybody saying climate change means all this stuff, to say that environmental stewardship means nothing is a little disingenuous. I am going to vote no because I feel strongly that OMPOC should be able to have a position. Now we have staff that can help us, we can go advocate, we can bring forth a transportation package. And to trip up on one term is just really difficult for me. I will vote as an MPC member, I will advocate what the group wants. When I'm at the meeting, understand I'm chair, so I have to kind of be in the middle of things too, but to have 80% of the population represented at that table, and they agreed to this, to me is like eons from where we were even a year ago, that we would come to a point where we agreed on a package as a group that represents very rural part of the state and Portland metro area, and that we can all get together and agree on a package that we could advocate for seems very powerful to me. So to get hung up on that phrase, if we know that the wording inside the actual number 11 fits the bill, then I just struggle with that.
Mayor Piercy and then Pat.
So I just want to make this really clear. The language that I'm trying to use here is not inferring that we're not supporting it if you don't make this change. It's just saying back to you, no, we would really like that language to be there and want you to consider doing that. It's not a explosive device. It's just expressing a point of view that we'd like to be taken into consideration.
Which is not what the chair said when he restated the motion.
Yeah, he
said,
did.
We support contingent on removal and inclusion of.
That was related to the allocation, and then a request for
consideration.
Consideration of the
So
climate
those are
change.
separate, so it's not
Yeah, they're
contingent
separate.
upon.
Right.
Okay.
There's a
If that's
semicolon
clear to
between
the two, okay, that's clear to Paul. Then.
I think I'm very clear, and I would be surprised if some of the other MPOs don't come back to the OMPOC meeting with something similar on a whole different point, where they said, our MPO would like you to consider this, but we'll support it in the end if we need to. I think that's what you're asking us to do with respect to the climate change, and we will absolutely raise that.
And we won't support it if those bullet points aren't removed
For the allocation.
for the allocation. So if
That's the motion.
if it comes out with those bullet points, we don't support it, is what the motion states.
Right, that's the motion.
Okay, that's,
Right.
that's throwing down the gauntlet. We do it or we're out.
Can drop it if they need to get to yes.
Shared by all of us. But I want them to know that at least from this message, it's important to us. They may choose to do that or not to do that, but at least we're expressing that it's important.
I think the point's certain well, right? But I think that's a good compromise to get us through this.
But it's important to note that if those bullet points aren't dropped, we don't support this letter.
Right.
If they leave them in there, we're off.
Right.
Okay.
And
I don't know if I like that, but that's what it is.
Franny.
I have a
Then we're gonna
point to
vote.
make, and then I just wanted to ask a clarifying question about the support. If one MPO does not agree to the letter, does the letter still go? All MPOs must agree.
It would be a position paper from the
Okay.
OMPOC,
Okay.
yes.
That was my clarifying. And then the other point I was going to make is, as an ODOT official at this table, I'm not an OMPOC member, and I'm not going to vote on this.
Okay.
Not only do we not support it, but the letter doesn't get written if they don't drop those bullet points.
OMPOC could
Come back
move
to
a
us.
letter forward without unanimous support.
So it's not what Christine
Is that
just
right?
said.
I don't think that's
No,
the point of it.
no. Each individual MPO could send their own letter. The voice is just stronger coming from OMPOC, which is why that group was formed, so that there would be an 80% of the population vote or voice.
It's important that we send the right message here because we didn't get what we needed 2 years ago. We need to get something.
Yes.
Right. My final point would be that the 30 cents is fine. I don't know where this 10-10-532 came from. I was involved in it. I don't agree with it. So I have a problem saying we should agree to this without very much discussion or analysis about how this actually would work. It seems a really prudent thing for OMPOC to say 30 cents is good, let's discuss the specifics later. A good position for OMPOC to end up at.
Why don't we say recommend instead of contingent then?
Well, that was your
Or
motion.
request instead of contingent?
The motion is that the support is contingent on removal of those allocation funds.
MPOs together, which we could be a powerful group. So this was our first attempt at trying to do that. So it may not go well anyway. We'll do our best.
I've been on UMPOC before, and I really understand all of this, and I respect that. And as I do everything that people have said around the table, I want, this one's, the other one I'm fine for asking for consideration. This one is a little bit more serious, like a serious discussion about whether you need to put in this letter the allocation. And I don't want to use the word contingent, but I do want to say it's a serious ask, and that we hope will be paid attention to by, because the other part of me goes, well, yeah, and I know, so we all should get along, and we should all cooperate, and we should all do what makes everybody be able to cooperate. But at some point, there are things that are important to set, that you feel that you have to say, I don't think this is the right thing to do. So however makes you guys comfortable, I just want to say I think that if we don't think that's the right thing to do, we need to let them know we don't think that's the right thing to do, and we're happy to support the 30 cents, and we would like them to think about the language. But you know, I'm not. I'm going to look around at you guys, but for me, I just think it's not smart to do that allocation in the letter.
But the motion says contingent right now.
So you want to clarify the motion, and the second can.
So all I will do, I'm just trying to think of the right language to use, because it's not like, I'm not asking in a non-serious way. I guess I put that at you two. That if we just say we're asking, we'd like to support, this is a motion that we support the 30 cents. We do not think that it should be, we recommend that there is no breakdown of allocation. And we ask for consideration of using climate change language. None of that is we're going to drop a bomb on you. It's really just trying to speak from our, at least the majority of us' perspective.
Is that good with the second?
I'm fine with that. Can
Okay.
I-
Yes, and then
and
we're going to vote.
That's fine. So on the specific, and I didn't raise this before, but I will put this out there, Christine, and this could be a message that you might want to carry. So when I looked at the specifics, the one that hit me, believe it or not, was the 5 cents per gallon for city-county funding split by population. The reason why because in September at our AOC Transportation Committee meeting, we had to actually move our meeting to the large conference room because it was packed with county commissioners and staff, because we talked about the allocation and how that works, and we put together a formula with the counties. And I got to tell you, it took an enormous amount of heavy lifting to get Washington County and Clackamas County to agree. Without them, it would have fallen apart. And so I saw that and I went, oh, I hope that doesn't kill that agreement, because they're very powerful right now and we need to keep them as friends. And that's also our backstop with Multnomah County getting everything. So that's the one that jumped out to me, and I just wanted to, so if that's brought up, that's something you can relay on, that the counties have discussed this, and there is an agreement in place. And I got to tell you, it was tough, but we got there. And that also helps spread money to other poor, what we call the poor counties on the east side that don't receive the larger amounts of money. So, but it was tough working with we did tried it once before, and Clackamas, Washington walked away. And so we finally got an agreement in September. That's it. Thank you.
All right, so we have a motion. It's been clarified. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Carries. I'm going to move item D, MPO safety planning, to after item F for sake of time. You have a clarifying question about what we did?
No, I'm sorry, I have to apologize. I'm back on the clock, so.
Oh, okay.
I'll
Thank
be
you for
leaving.
coming, Gary. So we'll move on to item C, the Go Oregon Project for Transportation Package. Go Oregon Coalition, the list of the coalition is in the packet. There's 46 entities there, including City of Springfield, City of Eugene, and the Association of Oregon Counties. It's basically a go big and go bold transportation package in the next legislative session message. And with the three things, maintenance and seismic preparedness, congestion and transit as three specific at leasts. And so there's no how in here, so there's no allocation issue either. So our issue is move approval of support for this concept.
Mr. Chair, move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Anything to add, Paul, real quickly?
No.
Any other conversation or discussion? All those in favor?
So,
Oh.
one discussion item. So the one thing that we would request, Lane County requests, is safety. Adding a fourth bullet item as,
That's a good one.
with safety. And just to remind, we are in not a very good situation. Lane County is number one in an area we do not want to be number one is, and that is Lane County has the most fatalities out of any county in the state of Oregon right now.
Per
Last year,
capita.
we're number one, and that's not an area we want to be. So if we could add safety as a bullet point in that, I would appreciate it.
So my motion that includes maintenance, seismic preparedness, congestion, transit, and safety.
I don't know if you
Moving
do
on.
that.
So I just have to say, this is, and based on what Mr. Gillespie said earlier, if the governor is serious about this is a request from the governor. This is not a position paper. It's not, it's basically what it is, and it goes towards what Franny said earlier and what Commissioner Lycan said earlier. Basically, it's a message to the legislature that you've got their back to make a heavy lift, and that there are these issues. Safety is an issue, but this is not a position paper. So I hope that clears it up. Yeah.
That's fine. I mean, sorry, Mr. Chair.
Good idea, but withdrawn.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so we'll keep that in place. So, do you mind, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, you're still on
Okay.
the floor.
So I appreciate that, and so it's not a position paper. I appreciate that. Then that makes sense to me. I think our local delegation is quite aware of the safety issues, and based on the tour, and so I'm fine with withdrawing that if that's not a position paper. We'll continue marching down that road.
All right.
And have that discussion.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Carries. Next one is the OTC is going to be here in Eugene on Friday, November 18th. And they'll have the Lane Act Chair, Commissioner Lycan, and three other members invited to share. They're not snubbing MPC. This is a state entity, and the ACTs are their advisory bodies, not the MPCs. We're federal. So that's not uncommon. So, and you, at the Lane Act, you'll be talking about this at the next meeting. So this is the points that you've already seen, emphasizing them. So this is direction to our Lane Act members, right? Paul?
If I may, there's two things here that the OTC has on the agenda. The agenda's not up, but we do know that one thing on the agenda for the November 18th meeting will be a discussion with the Lane Act, their advisory committee for this area, the OTC advisory committee, and they've invited Commissioner Lycan as the chair of the Act and 2 to 3 additional Act members to sit at the table and give this area's perspective on needs and priorities. I've asked ODOT staff, OTC staff, if the MPO can also have a seat at the table, or if not, the MPO can specifically give comment from this policy board during the public comment period at the OTC meeting. So the two things that we're basically asking for you today to provide direction on are, number one, give me some input, and it may be just what you've already approved, it has the letter to the Joint Legislative Committee. Give me some input for next week's ACT discussion that will inform what Commissioner Lycan says to the OTC on behalf of the ACT, and also determine whether you want to have a specific MPO message to the OTC on the 18th. Whether we get a seat at the table or not, I don't know. I haven't heard back from ODOT staff yet, but it could be delivered during the public comment period.
Franny?
I have a clarifying question. So Paul, you sit on the Lane Act as the MPO representative.
Correct.
And so can you tell me the difference between that role and sitting as an MPO policy board member on that Lane Act at the OTC meeting?
Well, I wouldn't.
How the role would be different between a Lane Act member representing the MPO and MPO representative? I'm confused.
If an MPO representative, presumably not me, hopefully one of you, wanted to deliver a message to the OTC, it may be different than what the Act delivers. That's really what the opportunity is. They could be different messages. So the MPO may choose to emphasize certain things out of this position paper, and the Act has a different position paper that they may choose to emphasize.
But I guess the reason I'm wondering about that is because the Lane Act is made up of individual jurisdictions that don't all speak from the same voice. So we have the city of Veneta, we have the city of Coburg that has their own needs and issues, and the MPO has a member that comes and represents the MPO. And they don't talk as they don't say that we're just representing the Lane Act. They represent their jurisdictions as well as when they come to the Act. You know what I'm saying?
What the OTC has asked from Commissioner Lycan and 2 to 3 additional ACT members is to deliver messages on the perspectives of the Act. Now, I also believe that there are going to be some individual small city representatives at the OTC meeting that will testify during the public comment period. And I'm just saying that the MPO has an opportunity to provide MPO-specific input when they're here in our town. That's easier to do when they're, somewhere else. And I'm just wanted to have that opportunity.
So Sid, maybe you want to clarify how that conversation is going to go at the ACT?
Well, in the ACT, because they can get pretty fluid, but I think the nice thing is we do clearly go at it from a consensus standpoint. And what I have found this year is that maybe not everybody feels like people feel like they're getting heard, but I think it's important to make sure the message is succinct. And even with, in my experience with this particular, when they have this opportunity to testify like this or to have this conversation, it becomes almost informal. And so the OTC, the commissioners themselves, they just begin to really, they come back, we present our message, then they start asking questions. And it's really, a lot of it's informal, just like a back and forth conversation with the members of the commission as much as anything. And I also don't mind clarifying the fact that while I'm as chair of the act, I do sit on our MPO. I think that that's important to clarify. There's nothing wrong with that. And so that if questions are brought forth about specifically about the MPO, which they really aren't, the questions are really talking about broadly what's going on in Lane County, and you know, they don't get into really bullet point specifics normally on these type of things. In fact, it's going to have a broad conversation with the strong message is going to be a package. And I'll just add this piece at the retreat. I thought it was really interesting. Senator Beyer pointedly looked at the Oregon Transportation Commission and basically used examples from his past experience that we have an expectation that you're not just there as a commission giving direction to ODOT. We expect you to step out as leadership and not only just give direction for ODOT, in a sense, go twist arms with the legislators. And I reminded him that I've been around so long that Stuart Foster and Randy Pape were not afraid to twist anybody's arms. And the Times ran that thing like a dictatorship, which used to drive me nuts. But I'll tell you what, people knew the Oregon Transportation Commission did have a voice. So I thought it was interesting that came from Senator Beyer to the OTC and asked them to step up. So that's where this is where this is going to go. So I to clarify, Paul, I think it'll be important because it might, you know, Alan's the chair. And if you can clarify, I think it'd be good to have Alan there. And, you know, if he's able to have a seat at the table or not. So I think that will be a good clarification. That's just my thought.
Mayor Pearson.
I was going to say, unless something's changed a lot, I still think it's really important to all the communities that are involved in the act, as well as the OTC, to hear the story of how all those communities are meeting together to talk about transportation issues, that it's still working and that you're still sharing information. And I just think that functionality piece is really important for them to hear because they want to hear that what they're using is working. So I would suggest that, and then I think everyone that's on the act has probably got a reason why the transportation matters to them. I don't think that's a hard one. So it seems to me you've got a really nice story to tell from all the communities who are around us. That's powerful for this.
Especially
for the state.
The Skip and Connect, I mean, the projects that were put forth, there were quite a few rural projects and rural projects that were successful.
Right.
And I think that that's a good story to tell as well.
Just to clarify, I'm going to be there as an individual and putting in public testimony likely. So if we are going to have an MPC person, it would either be the vice chair or somebody else if we get on the panel. Otherwise.
To Mayor Piercy's comments, I want to clarify that I wanted to bring this specific focus on giving input on needs and priorities, and the ACT will be doing that. The ACT also will be reporting on its annual work program and how it's operating, and that's where it'll deliver its message about the rural communities gather and talk and all that. So that will also happen.
I think it's really important.
And we've already approved and discussed the talking points previous meetings, so no issue on that. So I don't think we need any motions around this one.
Well, again, I've asked and I reiterated the request yesterday and have not heard back if we can have a moment at the table, but in either case, I was asking if this committee will direct one of your members to deliver a message from the MPO. So however you want to handle that.
So without objection, if that comes to pass, that they put us on the panel, that
Or
Christine or
testify.
Paul would be on the panel.
Okay, thank you.
Without objection? Thanks. Let's go back up to the CMAQ conversation, congestion mitigation and air quality funding. Pretty good news, at least we're not getting stiff-armed.
We think.
Yeah,
We think.
Actually, yes. We'll let you know on Monday.
Go ahead, Brenda.
Per your earlier direction, we have been working with our elected officials to garner support for the earlier request of making us whole for our CMAQ funding that we should have been receiving back to 2013, as well as an adjustment to our PL funding that includes CMAQ funding as one of the components of that. ODOT has done two things since we last met. The first is they have begun to set up that committee that they talked about for talking about how to allocate CMAQ funding in the future. So this is not a conversation about the Central Lane MPO or Salem Kaiser, also known as SCATs, and making them whole. This is a conversation about going forward with the allocation for CMAQ funding. They addressed a letter to Mayor Lundberg and request that she serve on the Program Advisory Committee to talk about this future allocation. And so we wanted to talk about that, and we probably we'll do that first, I think, to get that out of the way.
Yeah, I think necessary to make sure we have time to address that. I just passed around the letter that just came Tuesday evening, and it is, as Brenda said, a request for the CMAQ area here, which is the MPO, to have a member serve on the statewide program advisory committee that will determine how CMAQ will proceed, presumably starting in fiscal year 19. It says that the committee, it's anticipated the committee will meet for roughly 3 hours in duration, likely in Salem, likely every other month, hopefully through the summer of 2017 and not longer. Mayor Lundberg received the letter, and we also would like to have MPC discuss an alternate in case she's not able to attend a meeting, because of course it'll be a meeting with a lot of players and schedules may not always work for the mayor.
Or the group wants someone else to be the representative. Matt happened to send it to me.
Well, you've been doing the yeoman's work on it.
So, yeah, we need that direction today because they are trying to hold the first meeting as early December.
Anybody have objection to Mayor Lundberg going and participating, giving him hell?
You need an alternate.
Yeah, we need.
Oh, because there's multiple meetings.
Yeah, there's multiple meetings.
Oh, well, I'll be your alternate if you need to have an alternate as the chair.
And also, just so you know, you can read the letter, it does clarify that the member is allowed to bring staff support to participate in the meeting, so I anticipate attending.
Yes.
And it's 3 hours long. It does that too. Just so you know.
That's why I'm the alternate.
Okay.
Any objection? Hearing none, that's the way we'll move forward.
All right.
Can we do justice to the safety planning, MPO safety planning, and the point-to-point and the time allocated? Because they do have a couple of follow-up items that need addressing. So are they quick updates, or are they things that we should defer to the next meeting?
I think we can safely defer on both of those, and there probably is even one or two more sentences about CMAQ that should be said also. Yeah. So I don't want to miss that. But I think we can safely defer the safety and defer safety. And point
defer safety. Well said, Paul.
Maybe didn't mean it that way.
To December.
The project is not being deferred, just the discussion.
Yeah, the update. Yeah,
that's what I meant.
The update about it, and same with point to point. Okay, so we'll defer those two to the next meeting. And what was the final CMAQ part? And then we can.
So the discussion that we just had was around the new CMAQ process and the discussion to arrive at that, the committee to arrive at that recommendation. As you know, we've also been asked to be included immediately in the CMAQ funding that we've been eligible for since 2013, if not be made whole for the funding that we should have been receiving since then. We weren't receiving the warmest of responses to that initially, but we now have some positive indications that we may indeed receive funding for FY19. So on this Monday, Mayor Lundberg, Brenda, and I, as well as our three corresponding people from the Salem Kaiser MPO, will be meeting with ODOT Director Garrett and OTC Chair Bainey in Salem to discuss just that topic about funding now for us through the CMAQ program. And I've been told offline through a couple of ODOT staff that they say they're looking at funding for 16, 17, and 18. So that's better than nothing until 19. That's not being made whole back to 13. So we'll have a discussion on Monday and we'll let you know.
Go, go.
Yes.
Yeah, so we, as an update too, we have letters of support from Senator Edwards, Senator Przanski, and Representative Nathanson. I have been told that Senator Beyer and Representative Lively are also drafting letters. We've reached out to Representative Holvey, Representative Barnhart, to ask for letters as well. I haven't heard back from them. I have been in discussions with Senator Merkley and Senator Wyden's office. They've asked for a lot of information, and it's my understanding that Congressman DeFazio is also drafting a letter.
Yes, I heard from Peter that he's writing a letter for us.
And those letters may also be conveyed on November 18th to the OTC.
And fun was had by all.
At the 18th?
Falls is a long ways to go.
Yeah, that's true. It's all right. Anything else on CMAQ? Okay. Good. Then we'll defer point-to-point update and the MPO safety planning update to the next meeting. And so we're up to follow-up items, the next steps, ODOT update. Brenda, you wanted to say something on that?
Yes, I did, really quick. We have heard that there may be 2 upcoming openings on the Oregon Transportation Commission. Those have been not made official yet, but in the past, this group has directed staff to draft a letter to the governor stating that we believe we should have a representative from our area on the OTC. One of those openings looks to be the current representative from Douglas County, which is also supposed to provide us with representation. And so we just wanted to know whether or not we should be drafting an updated letter and sending that to the governor stating that we believe that we need a representative from this area. We can circle back around with you once that applications, and we'd have more information about anyone who might be interested in that, at which point you could weigh on that particular person. But at this time, we thought we'd get ahead of it and send the original letter that we sent to the governor's office stating that you wanted to have representation from this area.
In that letter, didn't we also mention Mr. Gatos as in that letter?
Yeah, in the past, but at this point, the application process has not been opened up, and there may be other people who might be interested in applying for one of those positions, and at that time, we'd bring that back to you.
Preemptive strike on we need representation.
Yes.
Okay.
Without a name included, just.
Right.
Correct.
Right. That'll come later. Anybody have an objection to that? No. With that?
We'll get that going.
Good. ODOT update, Franny.
Let me do
You're
an
moving.
act update too, which is mainly my update. We had a really good Lane Act meeting in September. We had the Oregon Freight Advisory Committee join us. They talked about the problems with the terminal up in Portland that's closed from the shippers, and how that's affecting this whole statewide economy. There were members around the table that were very interested in the topic and talking about how we may be able to do transload facilities, how to really specifically get bulk agricultural products up and through the system, and how I-5 is becoming more and more congested with trucking. There's also some movement going forward with technology, which was interesting, where the truckers' fleets turn over every 3 years, more frequently than most other types of fleet for commercial truck lines, and that they're already looking at automated trucking. And the future idea is that trucks would be moving 70 miles an hour, toe-to-toe, or, like a freight train going down the freeway. So that kind of alerted me that, boy, we better get I-5 ready for that. That was interesting.
They just had the first time ever a driverless truck, Anheuser-Busch truck, go from Denver to Colorado Springs on I-25.
I saw that.
2 weeks ago.
Yeah, that was.
The person was actually in the back sleeper part of the cab while it drove all the way down.
And they talked about how.
In the truck, but not driving.
Their big one of their big issues with freight is drivers. They can't get enough drivers.
Right.
No matter how much they pay them, and then also the long hours of getting up through a state where there's bottlenecks, or where you have to have 2 shifts, to get the goods from point A to B is really difficult.
I think that was a Google Uber.
It's really interesting. So that was our last meeting. We're meeting again on November the 9th. Yes. We're going to have the Confederated Tribes of the Coos, Lower Umpqua, and Siuslaw come and present their transportation plan. We're going to be talking about our 16-17 biennial work plan. And we'll be setting up a nominating committee for the chair and vice chair again. And then we're going to have Lane County and the MPO safety plan presented. And hear a little bit about aviation grant funding, what the process will be for those core grants that deals with the gas tax coming from aviation fuel. It's not very much money, but it's a statewide fund that people can apply for airport expansion. And then we'll be planning our OTC get-together on November 18th, so it'll be kind of a preparation for that as well. So that's the Lane Act update, and I don't really have any other ODOT updates beyond that.
STIP non-highway enhance, anything on that?
Not really anything updated from the last.
Legislative update?
Well, we haven't been able to report to you since this statewide,
Well, we haven't?
well, as far as the Veneta partially funded and
yeah.
we did not report that yet, but since we didn't have an October meeting. So.
That's true.
Commissioner, you were at the meeting.
So on the STIP, just real quickly, so on the STIP, as you know, the original project list was 6. And at the first Super Act meeting, we were able to move 5 forward, and at the final Super Act meeting, and I think the OTC is adopted. So we have those 5 projects. The one thing that we did end up doing a little bit is, because the original project on the Veneta, which was our number one overall project within the act, but that project in itself scaled quite a bit higher than what the original number was. So what we did is we basically went forward with the original number, which is about $600,000 or so less than what was asked. But I know that Lane County is working with ODOT staff and potentially looking at some either some in-kind or some other areas where maybe some of those dollars will be reduced. But the good news is that it is in, and so it is now a project. So it is eventually going to be completed. I think the hope was all those dollars to be allocated now. The challenge we had is there just wasn't enough. But I think scaling it back, we got all of our 5 projects in, and otherwise it would have been just 4. And so I came away feeling good about it, and Paul and Franny and all really appreciate all the work. It's funny now, Paul and I have a system. I just turn around and he knows to come up here. So, and just to make sure that we're on the same page. So it ended up being we got basically got what we asked for.
Specifically also by reducing the NETA project from the 1.6 million full funding request to funding it at a portion of that to get the project off the ground through engineering, design, et cetera. We were able to fund the last project on our priority list, both the ACT and the MPO, the way it was prioritized, which was the Springfield sidewalk infill, filling the gaps project, which is a very, many of you spoken about the bang for the buck for that project. So the good news is that got fully funded.
And also included 2 or 3 projects, actually, wasn't it? Highway 99, Territorial Highway, and Cottage Grove, is that correct?
Yep, and the leverage.
On the STIP leverage, which equaled somewhere around total amount $6 million on those projects alone. So Lane County came out looking very, very well on this process.
Cool.
And I'd like to add that Lane County and ODOT just met with the city of Veneta on the Elmira path, and that project looks very good for FLAP funding, Federal Lands Access Program, because it could also provide access right into this wildlife refuge in Fern Ridge.
Mhm.
And there's like 3 schools right there that could have environmental education by getting them right to this path with the RFB across the highway to the path. It'd be really awesome. So the flap funding, it might be the ticket for the rest of that construction.
Cool. Springfield Main Street safety update?
I don't think there, you know,
Anything to?
we're going to have a meeting, LTD on our MX corridor project at the end of the month. The only thing I'm really happy about is we're finishing a Virginia Daisy parallel route that people can use as an alternative bike route. It also slows the traffic down, car traffic down along the part of the corridor. So I've been hoping that we could have some alternative route that bicyclists could be, if they don't want to be on Main Street itself, it's a safer route. So, and it's being built specifically to accommodate bikes and pedestrians. So I'm really happy that we're finishing up and we'll be approving those plans here real soon.
So a Virginia Daisy is a style of roundabout?
Yeah. Well, we should put some daisies out there. Yeah.
Rail update, Mayor.
Oh, just to put something real quick is that we're through the alignment process, bringing the leadership group back together again to talk about how to use them to get support for rail funding during the legislative session. So that's where we are. It's in the governor's budget. It's never secure till you see it. So it does take that kind of attention, and really we're still at the place where we're just trying to maintain what we have and to rebuild. I will say the scheduling difference and some of the other things they've done has brought back a lot of that passenger loss that they experienced for a while, which is good news in terms of making the case to the legislature. So.
Will having Councilor Evans on the National Committee, or chairing the National Committee, will that be an asset to us?
I think we should bear that in mind all the time, don't you? I was
Still
the other
needs-
night when Congressman DeFazio made remarks. I was glad that he sees me as the rail lady. I like. We pay that attention.
Can you do something about it leaving at 5:30 in the morning?
I think they work there.
No, it still leaves at 5:30. I just took it. I think we did OMPOC and Lane Act updates. Anything else for the next agenda besides the 2 deferred items?
Will be the 2 deferred items. There certainly will be a follow-up from 2 weeks from today. The Oregon Transportation Forum has its annual meeting and should ratify a formal proposal for a transportation package. So it'd be interesting to at least share those details with you of what that first out-the-gate proposal is. And I also just wanted to call your attention in the packet. The last page should be the schedule and location for all of next year, so you have those.
Right. So next meeting, December 1st, Springfield City Hall Library Meeting Room. With that, I'll adjourn.
Greg, by the way.